Hi everybody, Jonathan Reeves here with another Vectorworks and Twinmotion tutorial. Now today we're going to be looking at how we can model something amazing up using Vectorworks based on the golden section and then do some beautiful renderings in Twinmotion. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you're new around here, please drop a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Okay everybody, so let's get started on this Vectorworks and Twinmotion tutorial, and we're going to start off drawing our rectangle tool. But you will notice if you hold down Command and Shift as you draw your rectangle, you're going to be able to generate something really special. It's the golden section, or the golden ratio, the Fibonacci series essentially. So this means that with a series of these golden section rectangles drawn in a very specific way, you'll notice that we can just keep subdividing. It takes a while just to kind of make sure you get the kind of right ones you're subdividing each time. But basically this is going to allow us to draw a Fibonacci series spiral, which we're going to use for our project. So next up we're going to go to the arc tool, and I've just reversed over to white mode when I do this bit of drawing. And you can see I'm just drawing an arc by radius, and I'm just using those setting out points to help me draw. And as you can see, it's already starting to spiral round each time, every time we make a turn. I could go around a bit further as well, but for this particular project I'm quite keen to just leave it as it is. So what we're going to do next is just take that shape and compose it, and basically we're going to go and copy it, and I'm just going to go onto a fresh layer and create a new design layer where I'm going to basically start to create my spiral house. So we'll click OK. Let's go for the paste in place command here, and basically let's paste in place that spiral that we've just drawn. Okay, so what we're going to do next is just pop that spiral into 3D and fly around using the flyover tool. And I'm just going to go down to my 3D modelling tools and get my push pull tool. The shortcut for that is Shift R. I think we'll bring it up about, let's say, 4 meters. You'll notice it hasn't got any fill at the moment, so give it some solid fill. Thinking about it, I think I might just change the height of that before we do much more work to about 3 meters. So that's easy to adjust in Vectorworks afterwards. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take our basically shell tool, and we're going to shell this object. And you can see the default was only 300 at the moment, but the real beauty is we can just change that size to something like 3 meters. And you'll notice that if you click the inside, you can shell inside, or if you leave it on default, it will go and shell outside. So it looks really interesting for our sort of project so far. What we're going to do next then is get the taper face tool, and we just simply click on the top surface there to anchor that. And then we can grab the side and just angle that out. Let's go for something like 30 degrees, and let's have a quick spin around and look at our design, see if we're happy. That's looking really interesting. Okay, so next up is one of my favourite tools. It's the Shell Solid tool, and we're going to give it nice chunky walls, say 450, and we'll click tick. And you'll notice the brilliant thing with the shell tool is you can shell it both inside and outside. I went outside because I wanted that 3 meter zone inside, and this has given me a really interesting little kind of profile. I've just adjusted the scale to 1 to 100 just so we can kind of see what's going on a bit more. Okay, so next we're going to start to punch some openings in this, basically this model here. And to do this, I'm going to just extrude a cube essentially. Let's make that a bit lower. Let's go for 2400 for a nice sort of opening size. Going to select both shapes. Going to go up to Model menu and Subtract Solids. Now that's really easy to get to grips with. It's called a solid subtraction command, and the real beauty of Vectorworks is you just double click to go back a step into the history of the model, and now what it means is I can get something like my rotate tool, and let's find my sort of pivot point that I want to rotate around. Let's go for the middle here. So hold down G if you're struggling to kind of get those snap points. And that'll enable you to kind of get those sort of construction lines. So I can click and rotate. You'll notice I'm actually be able to rotate and also copy at the same time, because that's the mode I'm on at the moment. And basically if I sort of exit the sort of editing mode, you'll notice that those holes all get punched together, which is excellent. Now it's really easy. You can also drag off these with the Alt key on the Mac or Control key on the PC as well. But let's just do a few more rotations of these openings here. Now, as you can see, it's just a made up project, so I'm really just trying to teach you as much as I can about some of the really cool things on 3D modelling for both Vectorworks and the rendering in Twinmotion. But I love doing projects like this, it's really good fun, and sometimes just working on made up fictional projects it's just a really great way to learn and improve your software skills, while also having an awful lot of fun and also just sparking those creative juices as well. So as you can see, the project's looking quite interesting so far. What we'll do now, I think, is we'll punch a few openings in the roof. So clicking 6 for the circle tool and just pulling directly down into the surface. Do remember though, you can just double click to access the history. And by holding down the Alt key on the Mac or Control on the PC, I can basically just drag off some copies of that circle to punch some more roof lights and kind of place them where I want. You'll also notice down in the bottom right corner, I've just suspended the snapping briefly, just so I can kind of avoid snapping to those set angles. And basically just kind of eyeball them in exactly where I want them. So it looks really cool. Got lots of nice sort of roof lights in our kind of structure now, and so on. So I think what we'll do now is we'll just carry on punching a few more openings around the sort of perimeter here. So to do this, we'll basically, let's click 4 for the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to draw dynamically on that face using the automatic plane. And again, once again, just sort of pull through. Okay, so that's cool. We could spin round and we can kind of keep doing the same thing on this face here. And again, of course, with Vectorworks, one of the beauties is you can just tap in all the dimensions as you draw. But what I really love is the ability for you to just double click if you need to. You can see I didn't quite do that one low enough. Hold B down if I need to, just to get the X-ray fill. And just make that a bit deeper so that we can actually kind of do that subtraction exactly right. So I'm just rotating a few of these, and I'm just going to click the rotate tool and just sort of do a few more chop outs as we go. Let's just rotate those. Made a rotate and a copy at the same time, which I didn't need to do, and it's looking interesting. So it really just gives you a bit of an understanding of how freeform the modelling is in Vectorworks. And there's many more tools that we could have a look at, but these are the ones that I just want to show you on this tutorial. Now, one of my favourite ones is the extracting tool. Okay, and I really like using the extract tool because what it allows me to do basically is pull off a copy of this surface here as a polygon. And then if I just give it some fill, so I'm going to hold J down so I can select it properly, give it some solid fill, and I'm just going to double click my offset tool, type in 200mm and offset inside. And then if we select both objects, we can right click and clip surface. That punches one away from the other, and then essentially that means that I can now select everything, deselect the other items, and then just extrude those internal and external sort of parapets for the roof lights there. So that looks really cool. Let's carry on now with some texturing. So on Vectorworks 2022, we've got a really nice new texturing tool that we can use, which means that we can do what they call per face texturing. So previously we used to have to extract items to do this, but now you'll notice that we can simply click on these faces, and let's just spin around while we're in that tool. So hold Control down, the middle button on the mouse, while you're in the tool in order to be able to actually spin around while retaining the tool that you're actually in. And that means that you don't have to drop the tool in order to do the orbit command. So I'm just going to get a few more textures here. You can see it's really rapid to apply. It's actually applied to that entire extrude as well because it was all one group. And you'll notice that I'm actually using my JRA texture packs while we do this bit of work as well. And these are libraries that I sell on my website that are available for you. They're really productive and they save a lot of time, and some really high quality architectural materials in here. In fact, overall there's 360 textures and materials. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just select the face that I extracted, and I just need to extrude that. Let's just do a tiny amount, something like 50mm. And that of course then gives me this extra three-dimensional object that I can apply another texture to. Let's put some nice sort of concrete on there. Okay, so the shape is coming on quite interestingly now. Let's do a little bit more work on the texturing. I'm just going to go onto the internal side of this and put some nice sort of charred timber texture here. So going for a kind of interesting look with sort of fairly brutalist sort of concrete on the outside, charred timber on the inside of this shape, and then a sort of concrete finish on the top at the moment with a white render inside. So a nice simple palette of materials. But the beauty is it's very easy to modify and change these materials, and these are all going to come through to Twinmotion when we get onto that stage of the work. Okay, so let's carry on doing a few more additions. I want a few more openings in my design. You can see I've just double clicked into the history of the shape, the solid subtraction, and I'm just basically editing these chop outs, if you like. I'm rotating some of those into the correct orientation. So click R for rotate with my workspace. Now my enhanced workspace is something that I've over the years developed, and it really saves me a lot of time. I always train my clients to learn the shortcuts and the right clicks that I have in my workspace. And basically this is something that I'd really recommend to you. As well as learning the shortcuts, make sure they're nice and easy to use. Okay, so I've just drawn a circle for the base, and I'm going to give it some solid fill, and here I'm going to go for the extrude command, and in fact extrude negatively so it goes away from the ground plane, if you like. And just looking for a nice material that I can apply from my JRA textures pack here. One of the lovely things about the textures pack is all the materials are super high quality and completely tileable or seamless. So you don't get any of those nasty sort of seams or junctions. They're beautifully prepared and work really, really well. So next up, I'm going to use the extract tool, but this time I'm going to extract not surfaces, but I'm going to extract these edges. So you can see they're highlighting in red, and if I hold Control down and spin with the mouse middle button wheel, I can actually get round to those extra points as well. Just make sure you pick all of them up, and I'm holding Shift down to get them all. So when I'm ready, I click Tick to extract, and you'll notice they're grouped. So I often use this technique to get into my group. I missed a little bit there, but I can just draw that in, select all of it, and then compose. So essentially I've managed to kind of get that spiral back again that I'm looking to work with. So now what I'm going to do is use my rectangle tool just to carve out another opening shape here. Let's do that. And I'm basically going to duplicate along a path all the way around using the duplicate along a path command. There we go. And I'm basically going to just put in a fixed distance and just preview that every 2 meters. Because what I want to do here is create lots of openings in one go, and I want them all tangential or rotating themselves round. So there they go. I can now extrude those. Let's extrude them up, say 2 meters. And with one single click, I can go to Model, Subtract Solids and punch all of those openings out in one click. Now that's really cool, and it makes it very easy for me to edit if required later on. So that's excellent. So the model's coming on really, really nicely now. Let's just basically get this over to Twinmotion. So the new Datasmith Direct Link, all you need to do is check the settings. I'll put it on high settings and then basically click a single button to actually export the direct link. Now you notice that here's Twinmotion, the 2022.1 version is the latest one, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago. Now if you haven't seen my videos on this, please check them out on the channel. There's some really nice videos on Twinmotion 2022 and the amazing new features. But the great thing for Vectorworks users, it's free. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to click Import. We're going to go to the direct link, and you'll notice that it's already got the Vectorworks file in there. Just make sure you collapse and keep the hierarchy when you import the file. So here it is. If we click F, you'll notice that we fit to the file, and here we are in Twinmotion. So as you can see, the model already looks really nice in Twinmotion with the real-time rendering, and we can spin around and manipulate the model nice and quickly. So we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is just go to a more neutral sort of background, change that background out. And the second thing I'm going to do is drop in a landscape. I'm going to go for a rocky grasslands. There's only two, the flat one and the rocky one. Let's start with the rocky one, and we'll see how we can kind of do a bit of landscape sculpting once this comes in. Good, okay, so I'm going to select the actual sort of ground plane, as it were. And you can see I can move that up and down, and then it will kind of basically interact with the landscape. But what I actually want to do is keep this ground plane, because I want this project to be situated in a sort of water, a sort of lake or sea type setting. So I'm going to get my sculpting brush, I'm going to get the diameter of that brush up a bit, and you'll see that basically now I can sculpt the landscape so it actually kind of basically appears through the model. So what's happening here is we've got the starting ground at a certain height. The landscape is actually below that height at the moment, but once I use the sculpting tool and raise the landscape up, basically the landscape will start to appear through the starting ground, and this is an excellent way to make really nice sort of landscapes, and you'll see how this develops in a minute once I change the starting ground to a watery texture. So the lovely thing about the sculpting tool, it's very sort of interactive. It's almost like 3D painting with Photoshop, and you can kind of basically quickly map out some nice sort of hilly landscapes. As long as you're not trying to do this sort of super accurately, it just sort of gives a really nice impression. And by basically adjusting the brush intensity, diameter, and also the brush type, the brush shape, for example, you'll notice that you can kind of make it quite gnarly and sort of rough and ready, or you can make it a bit smoother and so on as well. Now, I will refer you to some of my other videos on landscape sculpting. I did an entire video on this on my Twinmotion training course that you can have a look at for more detail just on this one feature. But it's a really, really fun tool to try, and if you haven't had a go with it, I'd really recommend. You can see it's actually superbly enjoyable to use, so it's very instant. Okay, so what we're going to do now then is we're going to go off to our water shader, and we're going to drag some lake or river shader onto that starting ground. Now look at that, already it looks absolutely amazing. The water in Twinmotion is just so beautiful, really realistic. I love the way it ripples and reflects the sky as well. So as ever, it's always a good time to save your project as we go through, and don't forget to kind of save regularly whatever project you're using. Now, I've just called this Spiral House for the obvious reason it's sort of based on the spiral or golden section, or should we say Fibonacci series. It's really just a fun project just to show you how quickly we can kind of basically take a concept from Vectorworks and work it up to stunning levels of realism with Twinmotion and that partnership of those two bits of software. So if you haven't already, make sure you get your Twinmotion 2022 download, as it's free for Vectorworks users, and so on. Okay, so what I've done here, I've selected the Vegetation paint tool, and you'll see that I've dropped in a selection of sort of alpine type trees. And what I'm able to do with that is basically spray and just brush those onto the landscape in a really kind of rapid, sort of no time at all, using the diameter of the brush there. And if you do want to, if you need to remove a few, got a couple in the wrong place there, we can get the brush a bit smaller. Just go onto the rubber there and just erase those items. So don't worry too much if you make a mistake. It's very easy to correct. And then let's spray a few more with a smaller brush size so it can be a bit more precise. But what's really nice about this technique is it does create a random type of tree and a random size of tree from those that I've dragged down into my dock. And the beautiful thing is I can select that painted object at any time and just do a bit more editing, as you'll see I'll do. Okay, so let's carry on working on this project a little bit more. I think we need to bring it to life a bit more with some weather. So let's just change the weather and introduce a bit of cloud into the sky there. That looks nice. You immediately see the reflections of the cloud on the sea, and the lighting looks a bit nicer and a bit more realistic as well. Okay, so I think next we're going to go and add a few bushes into our landscape as well. So what I'm going to do is start a new vegetation paint and drag down a bunch of different plants and bushes, and let's select those ferns there, as I've said before, one of my favourite plants, and we'll basically just drag those down into our project, a big selection of plants, and when we're ready we'll select them all and basically get our paintbrush and off we go. So let's sort of zoom in a bit closer to the landscape now and just kind of navigate around, and let's just start to sort of spray some sort of foliage and planting just on the kind of near shore of that landscape there. Just be a bit careful you don't go too far and sort of put the bushes in the water, but as I say, you can just remove those if needed. Now you can see this is such a rapid process. It really is, it's super quick, and it's really kind of guaranteed to make the model look a lot more detailed very, very rapidly. So it's something that I really enjoy, and this is the freedom that I absolutely love with Twinmotion. And this kind of freedom is something that you wouldn't get in Vectorworks for obvious reasons. It's not a real-time renderer. So my philosophy is you should really be looking at combining the best of your three softwares, for example, and that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. Look at the best of Vectorworks with the modelling, Twinmotion for the things like the landscape and the rendering, and also I'm going to finish off with maybe a little bit on the Photoshop for a bit of image editing to make them look a bit non-photorealistic as well. I may save that for another tutorial. Anyway, let's go back to what we're doing. You can see at the moment I'm basically placing some rocks from the rock library, and the Twinmotion rocks are beautifully realistic, so they're really, really nice looking, and you can see that adds a lot of detail to the model. Okay, good. So let's slowly navigate inside. I want to change that time of day, and that's the other lovely thing with Twinmotion, just the fact we can change that lighting and the time of day. And I want to make that material, that kind of ground material, a little bit more reflective. So I've just selected it with the pipette tool, T for texture, and slide the slider up a bit. Now, one of the things that I'd also absolutely love with Twinmotion is the ability to add things like characters and groups of characters. You can see these people are animated and they're very easy to drag in preset groups, which you can edit if you want to. But in terms of speed, this is just really, really quick and easy to add a bit of life into your model. So when I come to do things like some animations, that means that these people will be moving around and they'll look really, really cool in the animation. If you do want more high quality people, I would recommend you use the posed and still people. Again, check out my other videos for more on this. Basically, the still or posed people are a bit better quality in terms of the look of them. Great for stills, but for the animations, I much prefer using the animated people for certain types, especially when you're not too close to them, just to bring up the life. Good, okay, so what I'm doing here at the moment on the tutorial is just tweaking a couple of the camera settings, things like the vignetting, maybe the depth of field and the field of view. Now don't forget that you can easily change your system settings to improve the quality of what you see in the viewport. And I normally work on my Mac on high settings. Okay, so on my Mac M1 Pro, MacBook Pro, high settings work really well for me and I get a really good frame rate. But when I'm on my PC, as you'll see a bit later, I can crank the quality up to basically ultra the whole time. Okay, so you can see, let's bring a bit more life to the outside here with some more groups of people. They're quite big groups, but the beauty is if you do want to, you can just double click into them and edit and take some of those people out or move them around. Let's put some kids in here having a little run around. Well, I hope you're enjoying the new features so far. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce you to my new book, Revolutionise Your Rendering with Twinmotion. Here you can see the contents. It's a really big book, 322 pages of learning, beautifully illustrated and really lovely presentation. There's some amazing case studies by wonderful featured firms and wonderful featured artists from all over the world. And I really, really hope you enjoy learning from this book as much as I did contributing to writing it. A big thanks to Epic Games for sponsoring and helping out with the book. But basically, please have a look and watch my video on this if you're not sure. But otherwise, just hop onto the store and snap it up. It's only £35 and is an absolute bargain. And you'll really enjoy learning Twinmotion from this book. Okay, so we're going to hop back into Vectorworks and I just need to add a few more things to the model and I want to show you how nice this process is. So I'm just going to add like an access sort of deck or ramp through to that entrance area there. I'm just going to pop that into 3D. Let's give it some fill. Always make sure you model with solid fill. And let's just give it a nice bit of texture. So pop into my resources, find some nice sort of texture that I can use. Let's put this sort of weathered decking on there. That's one of the beauties about having my texture pack available is that you can just add those very rapidly. So I just want to move in 3D, a 3D move down slightly so that that surface doesn't clash with the other one. And let's just save that model setting there. So basically all I need to do now is scale up that texture and maybe kind of rotate it around. Now all of this is very straightforward, both in Vectorworks and Twinmotion. And then if I do basically click the update, you'll see that that will basically immediately go over to Twinmotion. And before I'm even in Twinmotion, that was already sent that change over to Vectorworks. So it's such a nice process this. We can keep working on a Vectorworks model and we can basically just keep adding and subtracting elements and then just update the Twinmotion model. They're basically now linked. And if you have them on two screens, it's almost like they're one program. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of like editing out some of those areas where the land sort of form will actually kind of interact with the landing there. So just sort of flattening it down, as you can see, with the flatten tool. It's a really nice tool just for lowering the landscape locally. And I'm going to select my painted landscape, and then I can just delete some of those kind of bits of bush and tree there, just to make a nice little kind of grassy area where we can land the project. So it's already looking really nice in Twinmotion. You've got the realistic water, the lovely lighting, things like the sky and those sort of things there looking great as well. So really with Twinmotion, it's a very sort of iterative process of refinement. What I really recommend is you just keep working on the project and adding a bit more detail where feasible. So if you do go back into the Quixel Megascans, you'll notice that you can actually type in the search bar, and I wanted to create a focal point of some kind of sculpture. So the Quixel Megascans are absolutely gorgeous. They're very high quality assets that you can use in your Twinmotion files, and you'll notice that you can basically just download those and drop them in. Now this one is going to look, let's have a look and see what size it is. Yeah, it's pretty small, but that's okay. I can just go onto my scaling. I might need to zoom in a bit there, so let's click F to zoom in. Maybe you don't need to do that. Let's just scale it up and let's move it just up a bit in terms of 3D space, just so the base of it is popping up. Excellent. So there we go. We've got our kind of sculpture, focal point sculpture for our interesting little kind of design here. We can easily move those people around, but let's just place that sculpture in the middle there. So that will act as a nice little focal point when we go back to one of our views. Okay, that's good. And if we just kind of frame that up and just about get a glimpse of that sculpture in that space there. Just something to explore. As I say, this is really just a made up project. It's not pre-planned at all. It's just me having a lot of fun. And I often do this. I find this such a great way to work. Just, you know, being creative and not being too restricted, and it's a great way to just try out some ideas and have a lot of fun. But also I thought it'd make a nice little tutorial for you, all on Vectorworks and Twinmotion. Okay, so we're going to go around our model and just create a bunch of images here. You can see all I need to do is orbit round, get the position I'm looking for, and then I can either basically click Create Image, or if I do want to, I can actually update the existing ones as well. So that's created a nice couple of images there, and I'll be able to render these out a bit later as well when I'm ready. So let's pop back into Vectorworks as well. Having a look at the project, I can definitely see I need to basically put some sort of barrier around the edge here. So I'm just going to offset, clip surface, take that external shape, and basically just before I go and extrude it, I'm going to get my rubber, my clip tool, and rub out a little rectangular section there where it intersects with the sort of deck, as it were. And let's just extrude that up by, say, 1 meter. And let's take my texturing tool and let's just apply some of the sort of concretey texture onto that surface that I've just added. Just a single click, basically, you can see applies to that per face, and you can add it to the top as well. What we'll do is we'll keep the internal face separate as white render. Excellent. So once again, I'll just click the Direct Link Datasmith button, and you can see by the time I've actually got to Twinmotion, it's already loaded in. It's extremely quick, and I can carry on working. And now I think my people can feel a bit more secure, at least while they're on the island there. Now, when I rotate, you will notice sometimes perspective correction looks good, but when you rotate around, you're working on the model, you really want to turn that off. It looks a bit strange. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to get a top-down view, and I'm using the camera align tool to help me achieve a really nice, perfectly sort of aligned top-down view of my project. And I want to create that so I can render out a site plan. And if you've watched any of my other videos recently, you'll see I've been experimenting with rendering sort of elevation, site plans and sections. I did another really popular video on animated sections as well. So please do check those out if you haven't seen them. Okay, fantastic. So one thing you're going to want to do is just make sure that all the images are set up to render at, say, 4K. Okay, so I'm basically going to create a little folder here called Golden Section House and just start these renders, and let's review these in a moment once they've rendered out. But as ever, the speed of Twinmotion is just astounding. It's only going to take a few seconds to render those images. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have making it. It's been fun to make. So I look forward to seeing you in the next videos, and if you haven't already, make sure you look at my new book, Real-Time Rendering with Twinmotion. Snap up a copy. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you all soon in the next videos. Bye bye everybody.